Hi, welcome, Gene from Mavstar. I know it's been a short while, what is it, nearly a week now. And I miss it, guys, I really do. I miss doing the videos every day and sometimes two for you and talking about this subject. And it's not that we're not still doing the work at the observatory. We don't get out a lot of the other equipment like the background radiation Geiger counters to check for alpha, beta and gamma. And another one we don't get out a lot is the atmospheric oxygen. And it's a shame because we used to offer a nice little package, and I think I'll start doing it again back on Patreon for the patrons, and as well as keeping them updated with the TriMag data on the magnetic poles. It's just a shame that YouTube and a few very foolish people have just ruined it for a lot of people on YouTube now, and it's just a shame to see it go like that. And there's not really another platform that is replacing YouTube, and that's sad as well. What I wanted to talk to you guys about is something that you probably are more than aware of. I'm talking about all the floods all around the world. Let's set the tectonic and earthquake activity aside, as well as the volcanic activity, because whilst we're seeing those things just very quickly, that's a good sign that the core in our inner earth has not solidified and it's still very much active. So and we will always have volcanoes until something very drastic in millions of years takes place. And then, we could end up looking like Mars with very little volcanic activity on the surface. So, like I was saying, lots of floods taking place all around the world. I know there's a lot of other things going on. But one thing that's not being talked about very much are the two very possible and likely causes of these floods taking place, and they're not mentioned. One is the grand solar minimum. When we get low solar activity, we get also equally low sunspots. That leads to a weakened heliosphere, and when we have a weakened heliosphere, as you can see on the flow chart, that leads to an increase in cosmic rays in the Earth's upper atmosphere. The other one is magnetic pole reversals. Leads to a weakened magnetosphere, and of course we're going to get more solar and cosmic radiation inbound at the upper atmosphere, and that's going to lead to more cosmic rays in the upper atmosphere interacting with atmospheric particles, and that turns these cloud seeding platforms into water vapor containing clouds, and that's where you get your flash floods from. Now think about this. We're weakened possibly more than 25% now of our magnetosphere. So, I was talking about it on Patreon just very briefly, that, if you've got children, just bear in mind that this is a very real topic taking place, and that you are frying your children and yourselves 25% and even possibly a little bit more than normal, than what you would have done 30 years ago. Have you seen a mention about the grand solar minimum in mainstream? Have they mentioned the weakened magnetosphere in mainstream? And have they warned you about the consequential problems that can lead to? And for heaven's sake, the last thing I'd ever want to wish on anyone is skin cancer. But, we're definitely in the threshold with a weakened 25% magnetosphere at this current point, and that is set to decrease even more. So, when we do get these water drops forming in our upper atmospheres, isn't it any surprise if there's 25% or possibly more in the atmosphere which can perform cloud seeding? Is it any surprise that the frequency of these 100-year record breaking floods are on the increase in not just magnitude but also on frequency? the scale of these events is enormous now. When we see these, and you know what, I can't believe, why would somebody, like we've seen recently in the United States, in China and other parts of the world, why would somebody put themselves in such danger to try and wade through, fast moving rivers that are temporarily moving down the streets now, along with trees, walls, timber, cars, you name it? Why would people do that? It's like, there is a good reason why, some people get called sheep, because their amount of intelligence is measurable to one of those. It really is. And I see it on lots of videos. You cannot stand up in high current water like that without getting swept away with it. And I think, a lot of naive people have very likely lost their lives recently through not being aware of the dangers. And that, this is one of those good things that we do on this channel. We're warning people about, the increased risk of skin cancers and other related, issues like, an increase in cardiac arrhythmias can be caused by an increase in cosmic rays. So, we're warning people about this, and we're trying to tell people not to be stupid enough to walk in high-speed moving water, because you will get washed away and very likely caught up in all the debris, which is nothing short of a giant mixing machine, with a load of bricks in there for good measure. Don't do it. I do miss the channel and talking about it regularly with you guys, and just bringing these things, these are, which I feel are very important things, up in the topic. We're not talking half as much on these topics as what we should be doing, really, and that's the truth. And now, as things are progressing, the magnetic North Pole hasn't stopped migrating, by the way. It still migrates, and recently, in the last few years, it's migrated faster than it ever has done in any previous years. And there is a trend being set where it's increasing gradually over the years. It's only a matter now of tipping point for that. And then, there are all the other dangers which we could put ourselves out of harm's way if we just use a bit of common sense. But everywhere I see the volcanoes are, guess what? In the very bottom of the valley, which is the lava flow path, is the most densely populated areas of residences, homes. Can you believe that? You don't want to put yourself in the bottom of the valley. You don't want to do it just in case there are mud flows, flash water flows, and torrents of water are coming down them valleys, heading towards your house. If you live in by a region where there's volcanic activity, you don't want to be there either for that reason, because that's the path the lava's going to take. It's going to take the most easiest route to the ocean, if it has to. Gravity will always win with that. So where the ground is lower, that's where the lava flows will be. That's where the main rivers are going to flow from these flash floods. Another thing that's not being talked about, and it should be, is that a lot of these floods are down to local governments not maintaining sewerage systems and evacuating the water fast enough. That's why we see pushing up the drain covers when they get these flash floods. The water pressure is that high in the the ancient sewerage systems and the drainage, that it can't clearly angle it, and it blasts the the manhole covers off. And as we saw recently over the last couple of weeks, people are unaware of that fact, that the drain covers come off. They can't see what they're walking through, even though the water is below the knee, and then all of a sudden they disappear down the drain hole, the manhole cover, because it's blew it off and left a 6-foot drop, and they disappear straight away in it. and they're not going to very likely get out if there is fast moving floods down them manhole covers, because they will be taken away with that water. So, you know, people really need to be observant of all these things that are taking place. And then we've got the other aspect that we can think about. You know, what about the diverse crops that are getting lost in all these flash floods? And how vulnerable is that leaving the residents of that country on their food storage, supplies of staples? You know, it's a shame that these things are not even for the smallest amount of time just talked about, so that people can get a heads up. You know, there should be like a pamphlet made, shouldn't there, with all the possibilities of these things that we've talked just briefly in this video, that people can, you know, be pre-warned about it beforehand. You know, don't go walking through water, even if it's just above your ankles. If you can't see what's at the bottom of that water, then there could well be the manhole cover blown off. Or, you know, be careful where you select and put your house, because you could be putting it in direct danger. Just because these floodplains haven't flooded, you know, for 100 years, it doesn't mean that they're not capable. You know, I see this a lot, even in countries like the UK, you know, where people have, you know, took it for granted that it hasn't flooded for 100 years, and then all of a sudden, wallop, in a few nights, it's up to the roof tiles. So, well, guys, I also want to just briefly, before we end the video here, mention that Monday on the 4th, we'll do the latest magnetic pole reversal, but that will be only for our superstars and special patrons on the Patreon account. And, you know, you are welcome to come over there. You know, so long as, you know, it's kept clean, because there is a zero tolerance now to nonsense. You know, we put up with enough of it on YouTube, and we won't put up with it on Patreon, no way. So, you know, they are very much protected from all that crap, and they'll get blocked, whoever thinks they can come along and just trash that Patreon site for us. And you know, yeah, we'll get that out to you on Monday, and we'll see if we've got a bit of time over the weekend, and we'll do the latest Earth Alpha glance for you as well. And guys, it only costs £3.69 to become a patron a month. A one-off payment a month. That's nothing. That's not even a cup of coffee. So there is no excuses for anyone not to be over there. You know, you get your TriMag data on the latest position of the magnetic North Pole, plus all the other extras. So hope to see you over there. And, you know, the only thing I can say is, guys, have an amazing weekend with your families. You know, cherish every moment with them, and keep yourself safe. As always, bye for now.